This is today's business leaders. Actionable advice from real-world professionals. And now here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, so on the show today, I have Ben Meditucci, and we are going to talk about social hacking or social engineering, however you want to term that, behavior observation. We're going to talk about psychology and physiology, and also going to talk about, and the reason that the reason we're talking about this is it applies in everyday life all the time. Yeah. Doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or not, but it super does apply if you're an entrepreneur. Yeah. And when Ben first came on a few months ago, I don't remember when, earlier this year, he started talking about like body language, and that's something that I pay a lot of attention to. And Ben just did something right now unconsciously that,
That's right.
but then you corrected it because I'm not crossing my arms.
Yeah.
But we started having this conversation, and I thought it would be interesting to have it here on the show because it's something that I super nerd out about, and I think Ben does too. So thanks for coming back, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you start out by just kind of sharing why you started paying attention to body language and the psychology and like social behavior, and kind of where you're at, and we'll just kind of roll with it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I own an online business, and where we do like digital marketing. I have clients that I work with. I also have my own e-commerce stores. And so it's been very important to understand this stuff, meeting and talking to people. But the way I got into it was back when I was younger, before I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went and I did door-to-door sales, and door-to-door sales, like you have like such a quick chance to get an opportunity to make a sale that like you have to understand everything that goes into a person's decision process. So for me, it was like super important knocking on doors. As soon as they answer the door, like what's their tone? What's their body language? How are they standing? Are they standing behind the door? Are they standing out in front of the door? Or do they open the door and come outside to talk to me? Are they smiling? Are they frowning? You know, what's going on around them? Are their feet crossed? You know, things like that. So for me, I started like understanding. We had a training manual, and it talked about these things. And then outside of that, I was like, okay, I learned a few things from the training manual, but I want to understand what's going on a lot more. So I went and I started reading books and studying it myself. And actually, like learning these things made a huge difference, because there's a lot of times where people will say one thing, but their body will tell you another. So if you can pick up on that, it really, really can save you a headache, not only with like work stuff, but with personal life too.
Yeah.
Kind of see through shit or understand things, the third layer that you don't normally know.
Yeah. What, give us an example of that, because I think that's a great thing to pay attention to, because when I wasn't aware of that stuff, you know, we tell ourselves we should listen to what people say, but what we should really do is pay attention to their actions, right? So do you have an example of once you knew that, then you watched it and, you know, what happened from it?
I would say one of the biggest things is watching like closed body language. So like an example of that would be like if I was sitting here like this right now, you know, that's closed body language, and like the psychology behind, you know, why we call this closed body language is because we're protecting ourselves. When you're crossing your arms, like if you think about the times when you cross your arms, and like sometimes, yes, you do it when you're not hiding something, but like the times when typically you do it, instinctually you're cold, maybe you feel threatened. So you're buffing up, like you're putting your forearms out in front of your vital organs, and you're closing off. People also do the same thing with their legs. Like a lot of times people will cross their legs, and that's a good indicator that maybe they're either, number one, feeling uncomfortable, or like, you know, out of their normal zone, or number two, maybe there's more going on. And the thing like about body language is like just because someone has their arms crossed, or just because they cross their legs, or just because they break eye contact, it doesn't mean they're lying to you. They're just indicators that could be possible. And what you do is you pick up on enough things that a conversation where you say, okay, there's enough stuff here that seems abnormal to where like I want to push further.
Yeah.
So that's like how I would know, like someone would answer the door and like, oh, I'm not interested, or oh, you know, and then I would just continue. Like I see all these little things. It's like this came out when they said this came out when they said this. They're breaking eye contact with me. Okay, it seems like they're not being honest, so I'm going to keep pushing them to try and make a sale. And that's how I was able to, you know, pursue and get through what they call like smoke screens, which is just a fake objection. And that was like awesome for me, because a lot of the time it's like just getting that initial. Once you get them to open up and talk to you, then you have much better time trying to make the sale. So just breaking through that initial ice using body language.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad what you just said there definitely makes a ton of sense. You can't just take, one action and believe that one. It's got to be the whole picture, and it also has to be on top of what's being said, right? Because they're obviously together. But if they're totally conflicting, like, like you said, somebody is sitting way back or like, turned away from you, and they're like, oh yeah, I super want to do this, and they're turned away like this, that's not true. Like,
no, not at all. Or if someone's like, you're asking them a question and they have terrible eye contact, number one, that could just be because they're nervous, but a lot of times, like, why are they nervous? Why are they so nervous? What are they hiding? So like they're crossing their arms, they're like standing shifty, those are all like little indicators of things. Or people scratching their face.
Yeah.
Those are indicators.
The one you said that I never paid attention to in women, you said on our first one, you said that they'll go like this.
Yeah.
Like they touch the neck a lot.
Their neck.
Yeah, you're totally right. I didn't notice that was different.
Yeah.
So that's been really interesting to pay attention to because I never read about that one before.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Like one thing for me, like you can actually notice like there's a couple of things you can do to tell if someone's attracted to you. Number one, pupils will dilate. So with people who have blue eyes, it's tough because sometimes their eyes dilate anyways due to like more light sensitivity. But people's eyes will dilate. And then the other thing is they'll touch their chest or like play with their necklace or their ear. So like they'll come like here or here. That's something that I read in a book called What Every Body Is Saying, which I highly recommend people read. I've read it like 4 times now. Every time I read it, I pick something else up. But it's true. Like I've noticed that like in conversation, I'll be like talking to them and I'll just kind of, since I've started my life by looking through these things and finding these things, it kind of comes naturally now to pick them up. So like I'll notice that happening and I'll just smile to myself and know, whatever.
Yeah. And it's definitely something interesting to study. I don't know if I ever told you to read Ghost in the Wires by Kevin Mitnick.
Mm-mm. Oh, I think you did actually. Last time we talked, you did.
I know, and I didn't read the book you just mentioned. I need to read that one.
Right,
what I like about that book is he's a social hacker, social engineer that ended up working for the FBI, and a lot of what you're saying, like person to person physically, can be done tonally and over the phone too. And he was just over the phone.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the things I pay attention to is when I do more and more video calls, so more of it is body language now. And like one program I have, if you don't come on video, I won't let you in, which is which
I think that's smart.
Some people don't get, but I'm like, we're going to be working together for a year in this program, and if you can't talk to me face to face, then we probably aren't going to be a good fit. Because either you're too chicken to come on camera, which is fine, but like again, I won't work with you, or you do have something to hide. And at one time when I called somebody out on it, they totally did have something to hide that I found out about afterward, which is so weird.
Yeah, that's funny. Good thing. I mean, I'd say that's the biggest thing that I've struggled with in having my business is people either, number one, changing their commitment once they've already made it, or number two, I've seen people, try backing out of things when they're already, you're already like, hey, I did all my part. You can't run away now. It's not fair. You built your whole website. Now you think you don't need a website? What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely, as I look back over the people that have screwed me over the years, if I would have paid attention closer, I would have seen it ahead of time. Now I know, but I've had people that like claim to be something but never come on camera. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
In today's world. And then I've had people that agreed to something, and now that I can look back now and clearly see they were totally lying, they were never going to pay me.
Yeah. The nice thing is, I think if you do it on video camera, can you record it? And then if they change their mind, you could send them, hey, this is what we talked about, 3 months ago.
I've been doing that for a couple of years. I record almost everything, and they know. I say, hey, do you mind if I record this? Or, for my own notes or whatever. I did that, and I still had somebody beginning of this year screw me out of like $3,500, and I sent them
Wow.
I was debating about taking him to court. I didn't. I just settled out of court. But it was like I sent him everything. I'm like, you agreed to this, and it's in writing here from you, and on recording. But it doesn't mean that people are going to own up to what they agreed to. Unfortunately, it's
Yeah,
proof
I know.
crazy. But
What do you do? Speaking of that, what do you do when you have accounts in arrears? That are like, I have accounts that are where people, and a lot. The funny thing is, a lot of it only happens when it's like a foreign customer. So like people in Canada, I've had this happen too, where they just,
weird.
they're 3 months late on paying their 3 months of marketing. And
Couple things. One, I don't do anything unless I'm paid up front.
so even if it's like if they're doing like marketing, for example, like 6 months of marketing, you have them pay you up front.
They have to pay at least for the month up front. So I only
Yeah.
work for what I was paid.
Yeah.
With any time I've ever tried to collect, I immediately try to get on the phone with them or video with them, because if it's a solvable problem, I'll know right away.
Yeah.
So like when I've called, when I call somebody, I'm like, hey, this is outstanding or what's going on, then I can figure out where they're actually at, because they'll give you all the real details. In writing or text or, whatever, people ignore it, or they can just shoot off a line and there's not enough data there, right?
Right.
So,
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. We've had, I think accounts arrears is always a big part of any business, but just navigating that. I always try to be like, I don't want to burn bridges, even if someone's not paying us what they'd agreed to. I don't want to burn bridges, so I'm trying to figure out the right way to navigate that without closing doors or creating negative, situations.
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, and it's wise that you're trying to do it without burning bridges, because I didn't do it that way early. I was just like, fuck you, where's my money? Which doesn't work for anybody. A couple things to pay attention to. Collections. I ran a repossession company for almost a year, and I've did some of the collections and rode in the trucks and did the whole thing. And I have a good longtime friend who's been a repossession agent and in collections his entire life, and he's a few years older than me. Collections is reverse sales.
Mm-hmm.
So all you have to do is sell to them why it's good for them to pay you what they owe you.
Right.
So and one thing that is always helpful in the negotiation is to pay attention to like using outside forces. Outside forces are always your strongest ally in sales. So if you need Oren Clef or something, I can't remember his last name. He wrote the book Pitch Anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks a lot about the psychology of sales and everything. And one of the biggest takeaways that I've used over and over since reading that a year or two ago is he's like, it's easier to pressure people in a positive and ethical way if you use outside forces like the economy or your competitors or self-imposed deadlines. So when you're negotiating with collecting, if you can say, I don't have any choice, I have to do this, otherwise my partner is going to have an issue with it. Like that's or whatever your reasoning is. That's something outside of yourself that you have to say this is a real factor, and it makes you not the bad guy.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That way you can have that. It's kind of like I'll talk to my manager type strategy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the exact same thing. Because that way you don't have to. Then you're not just like head-to-head battling about it, because that just makes people want to be stronger and being stubborn.
Yeah.
And you can also use outside forces, even outside of your company, and say like, well, if this isn't resolved, your marketing get turned off. You're going to have to go somewhere else. If you're having internal problems, those still have to be solved. This isn't really about me, Mr. Customer. This is about solving it, and I'm completely open to solving this with you, even if it's like we cut back and you pay over 6 months for the 3 months you owe, or make a reasonable offer that you think will work, because there only 1% of the time is it going to work out for you to take legal action. Yeah. There's only 2 times that I will do that. One is if I feel like somebody on my team or somebody that I'm responsible to protect has been harmed, then fuck it, I'm doing it. I don't care what it costs me.
Yeah.
Or in the rare case that I feel like I will come out on top, and it's the right thing to do for my team or for my company, for other people. I don't go to court on my own ego. It's just too expensive and stupid.
Yeah, and it's a waste of time.
Yeah, it's a waste of emotion.
Opportunity cost.
Yeah. So I've paid people that absolutely did not deserve to be paid because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And I've walked away from money that I have every right to collect, and I could have easily won in small claims, and not even hire an attorney, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess maybe one thing that would be cool is figuring out, number one, because I know you know this body language stuff just as well as me, if not better. So how do you use that when you're filtering out the people you're going to work with?
Anything higher end where I'm going to have direct access with the client, they do come on video with me. I basically force people to do Zoom now because it's easy and it's completely accessible. And it tells me their seriousness level. Yeah. And it's just me and them. So it's just like this. I mean, I know we're live on Facebook, but it's like normally it's just a one-to-one conversation. So I use that, and the things that I pay attention to are on my side of the table. I'm always paying attention to mirroring their behavior to give them comfort, because and I do it unconsciously now, but I'm doing it now. I'm leaning in, leaning in. So it's just like normal. And if you were to sit back like this, I would pull back too. Not at the exact same time as you, hopefully. I'm
gonna start like patting my head.
But there's an Eminem video I gotta send you that has the funniest clip in the middle of it where they're doing that. But anyway, that's what made me think of that. But because you don't want to do it like so obviously that everybody's like, what the fuck is going on? They're copying me. That would make them uncomfortable. But if you pay attention to how people are standing or sitting or talking, and you mirror them at about 80% is my rule of thumb. I don't have any scientific reason for that number, but I mirror them very closely. Then they subconsciously begin to perceive, oh, Gabe's like me. I can trust him.
Yeah.
And so I do it intentionally because I do want them to feel like they can trust me, so I can actually learn about them. And I'd like to remove as many facades as possible.
Yeah.
So I mirror body language. I mirror tone. I mirror speed of speech. The word's escaping me right now. Like speech meter, the meter of how they're talking, and then I model language. So I let everybody else, especially in the sales conversations, lead in how they're going to talk. Do they cuss? Do they not? Are they religious? Do they like family stuff? Do they like drinking? Or do they not? I'll ask questions to figure out where they're headed in that direction, but then I'll mirror them, because the conversation isn't about me. This isn't about standing up for my own authenticity.
It's about them.
I just need to pay attention to them. And then if I mirror them tonally, body language, oh yeah, I love that stuff too, or I've done that. I mean, I have a pretty wide range of things I've done over the years, which makes that easy too. Yeah. You're like, oh, like I do e-commerce. I'm like, yeah, I have a little e-commerce store, and I do. I'm not lying. Like there's tons of shit like that I've done that allows, by me saying, oh yeah, I've done that too, or I really enjoy that, or I really liked funnel hacking too, or like whatever you brought up, I could probably mirror it with some experience. Or I could say, oh yeah, my brother runs a construction company. Like if I didn't have one, which I did in the years past, but
that's how you started out. So you told me, right?
Yeah, that's how I started. And even if I hadn't, but I was trying to bond with somebody over that, by me saying close friend or family member does that, and I really enjoy it, because we want to be liked, we want to be connected, your brain is going to automatically connect and be like, oh, well, he gets it. Like you're gonna justify why you're spending time with me or why you're talking to me.
Yeah, absolutely. People want to be around like people.
Yeah.
Like-minded.
Yeah. I listened to a really, really interesting conversation from a friend of mine, Nathan Frazier, who talked about all the race issues that we're having in our country. And it was pretty interesting. He broke it down to saying, yes, we do have issues, which I agree with. But more of what we haven't dealt with clearly is that people want to be around like people, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we haven't solved the other problems around that. So it was really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting.
But yeah, we definitely want to be around like people. And so that's just, we're inherently drawn to that at the most basic biological level. And so if you give people a reason to believe that you're like them, then they'll trust you more.
Yeah.
The reason I do that, and everything we're talking about today should be used ethically, obviously, but I'm going to say
no manipulation.
manipulation, in my opinion, is when you use your skills to hurt people. Like, that's not what this is about. But when you're using it ethically, then you can actually move somebody forward and help them grow. And so if I can get you to trust me and warm up by all those little things that I do, then what I'm going to do is ask you questions that will uncover everything else. So I'll say like, hey, tell me about your business and, how you started and where you got to today. That's one question. And then I'll say like another question, couple of questions that I use, and I'll explain why, is like, imagine that we work together and it's a year later, tell me what success looks like to you. What that's going to look like, define what success would look like. And then basically another version of that question is, if you could wave a magic wand right now, what would you change about your business or your life or whatever I'm trying to dig at, like to find out what you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I can get you talking, then I pay attention to how you talk about past vendors, past relationships, past experiences, whatever. And I try to find out, do you take ownership for the mistakes that happened, or do you blame everybody else? Because whatever you do in this conversation is what you're going to do to me in a month when something gets fucked up, because that happens in business, like things break or things happen. So I'm trying to gauge an indicator of if you're going to be shitty to me, or if you're going to come to me and say, you know what, I don't know what's not working. It might be a mistake I made, but I'm concerned about this area.
Right.
So like I had a call with one of our awesome clients the other day, and with a couple members of my team, and I told him this before and after the call, but I'm like, it's such a pleasure to work with you because you take ownership of your business and you realize, and you say things like, I'm not sure if I did this wrong, but I want it to work well. And so let's get together on it. Like just totally owning. There was a hiccup in the process. That was my mistake. I didn't realize I made the mistake, but he took ownership of it. And it's like, I could have clients like that all day long.
Yeah.
Whereas,
they're a pleasure to work with. Yeah. It's like a team effort.
It's so much easier. Or you have the people that say, oh yeah, this past guy did this and it didn't work, and I've had nothing but bad luck, and like, which is people blaming outside circumstances, right?
Right.
So those are some of the things I pay attention to. And then I also pay attention to, which I'm doing a little bit right now, which is not intentional, how much the other person dominates the conversation. Because if they talk the entire time and never take a breath to listen to a response, then that's going to be a hard relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to have the balance of things.
It's got to go back and forth. So I don't know if that's if you've thought about that stuff actively inside the conversation, but I'm curious to see what you do when you're screening people.
Yeah, absolutely. I usually start by asking a lot of questions, and like kind of some of the same stuff that you do with like, tell me about yourself, and like tell me a time when you guys have kind of goofed up and how that worked out for you, trying to see like who they put the blame on and things like that. One thing I look for too is tone. I remember like since we're talking about like the tone and behavior stuff, so typically like people, when they're confident, they talk and they kind of either stay monotoned, or they'll start at a higher place and they'll end at a lower pitch. And then like I look for like when people like end, like if they end on a high note, it's usually like, if you think about it, every time you typically will end on a high note, it's because you're asking a question. So you're unsure, right? So like I'll be like, hey Gabe, how are you doing today? And like my today, it goes up. Yeah. And so like that's like a question where I don't know the answer. So I try to listen to like how people say their words so that I can know like if they're like definite meaning or if they're just bullshitting. Or like a lot of times when people like greet you and they talk in like one pitch, and then like you start actually talking to them and they start telling you answers to things, and then their pitch goes way up. It's like, your tone kind of just like jumped off the meter there.
Yeah, that's
Um,
cool. I never paid attention to that before.
I used to, so that was like a lot of the stuff I learned came from door-to-door sales, and like with like closing, it was like that's where they like really focused on our tonality was closing. So like if you're closing the sale, you always want to say like, whatever the close would be, are you going to be here tomorrow? Like you don't want it to be, are you going to be here tomorrow? Like super, are you going to be here tomorrow? Like it's like a statement almost, not like a question, because that
Hmm.
like instills confidence, and the people are less likely to tell you no if you act confident when you ask them. And so like that's one thing I pay attention to too, is like how is this person saying what they're saying, not just like their body, but how are they saying it. But I think video calls are a good idea. I honestly I do a lot of phone calls. I don't do as many video calls, so maybe that's something I need to add to my business is a video call. Just because I guess it's like we're right here, even though you're across the country.
Yeah, I
Just
can
like,
pick up. I mean, whatever the never split the difference. There's a stat in the book that I always screw up, but it's something like 65% body language, 30% tone, and the rest
yeah,
words.
it's words.
So
Yeah,
I
10% of what you say is
yeah,
words.
it's something like our words mean nothing comparatively. So yeah, so I
Yeah,
always prefer to do it in person because that's what I love about the podcast. Honestly, what I love about having you on the show and everybody on the show, because I can bond so much faster and get to know somebody. It's like a hyper focused thing. And the cool thing about
yeah,
video is, for whatever reason, it's different than meeting face to face, and potentially in a better way. Sometimes I feel like I'm missing a couple pieces, but then on the like, because I think I miss like 3 to 5% of like what's going on over video. Just I think there's some loss
yeah,
in like in a traditional face to face. However, like I have your total attention right now, which is
yeah,
different. And if we were in a coffee shop, we'd be looking around, like
yeah,
like we'd be getting a drink, or like there'd be interruptions. Whereas
yeah,
like now on video, like if I had to get up and deal with something, I would apologize to you.
yeah,
Like people do that, like I'm sorry, or like if I'm on a call with my team and somebody comes to my door, I'm like, oh shit, sorry, I gotta give me a second. Like I feel bad because it's like I've
yeah.
locked in this channel with them, and then I can't, I don't want to disrupt it. So there's an aggressive advantage to video. I feel like,
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it also, yeah, helps to see the real person.
yeah,
The other thing is people can kind of show you what they want to show you. However, I guess if you ask the right questions, you get around that. It's not really an obstacle.
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, no, that's cool.
yeah, and yeah, usually you can, and you can tell if it's like totally staged. If it's just a regular call, this is staged. It's my podcast, so like, but if
Yeah,
like I don't like when people just call me, like you can see all the shit behind my desk and like what I do and who I am.
yeah,
um, so that's helpful. Yeah. What was really interesting that you just said about the tonality and like your voice going up when you ask questions. Um, it's really cool because I have found over the years that when I'm reaching out and trying to get like through a gatekeeper, or I'm doing cold calling, or I'm trying to achieve something, um, asking the question and like stumbling around like you need help, and immediately elicits people's desire to help. Almost everybody I've ever met in my life is totally willing and interested in helping.
hmm,
So doing outreach like that is good because you can say like, hey, Ben, I don't know if you can help me with this or not, but I'm trying to find this, or I'm trying to get to this person, or do you guys do this? You're going to be
yeah,
like, oh yeah, the word help is like one of the most powerful words ever.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Uh,
So you kind of preface it as like, hey, I'm looking for help, and
yeah.
then people will be more willing to talk to you.
Yeah. It's the best with cold email, with cold calls, with anything where you're stuck and like you need to get through something. Um, and you even, a friend of mine gave me the script. He's like, when I call and leave a voicemail, he'll be like, ring ring, hey Ben, I don't know if you can help me with this, but if you can give me a call back, my name's Gabe Arnold. Here's my number. It's like all
Yeah,
curiosity. It's help driven, and you can get callbacks very easily with it.
yeah, that's cool. People feel like they have a purpose to now. They're like their civic duty to call you back. That's cool.
Exactly. And what we have to watch for though is what you just mentioned was really interesting. Like if you're questioning somebody, like obviously you're screening them to see if you're going to work with them, and they come back with like they're raising their tone and they're almost asking themselves a question when they answer you. I think
Yeah,
it's good to know that's what's happening, or at least kind of weigh it in the big picture, because I think it is our natural desire to help. And if you're a good entrepreneur, you want to help people and make an impact. Uh,
yeah,
And so if you're not careful, you'll let like your normal psychology trip you up, and like, oh, they need my help could be subconsciously kind of how you're reacting. And then you might miss the signs that they have no idea what they're talking about, and you might have a bigger problem on your hands than you realize.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to kind of go into conversations with like an open mind, like not trying to enforce anything. I always tell people the best way I find to work things is like, I always, even if I'm cold calling and someone's like, I want to sign up right now, you know, like we have a process that you have to go through. So like, it's always going to be like, you show interest in what we're doing. Okay, great. Let's set up a 15-minute phone call to where we can like see if we like each other and like ask each other a few questions. If that makes sense, then we'll set up an hour-long meeting, and then we'll get into the real stuff there. And I feel like that's always helped me like keep it on, because I've had people who are like, and honestly, recently we had a client, a moving company that we worked with, and they wanted to get Google ads going, like boom, like they needed it done yesterday, and they came to us and they're like, here's our money, get it done. And like, I was like, okay, here's this form. I need you to fill it out so I can give it to my ads experts so they can set up your ads. And they're like, okay. And they type out this long Google document of a bunch of jumbled, honestly bullshit. Didn't mean anything to us. And I took it and I was like, I need you to put this into the form. And they like made a big stink about it. And I was like, all right, fuck it. We'll take care of it. So we got to take care of it. We got to set up the ads. Then the client calls me and he's like flipping out because we didn't use the ad copy he gave us because he didn't give us any ad copy. And he was like, I need it launched by the end of the day tomorrow. We need ads live by Wednesday. So like, we're like pushing for this, you know? And it's like totally something I would normally never do. And it was like $1,000. It was like a small little project. So I don't know why, for some reason I was like, we'll just, you know, trying to be customer service oriented, and it totally backfired. The guy didn't know anything about Google ads. You know how there's always a period of time where ads have to be approved before they're launched?
Yeah.
So what happened was I told him, okay, ads are launched. And then he texted me like an hour later. He's like, well, there's no leads coming in yet. So are you bullshitting me? And I was like, your ads are under approval for Google. And then he calls me and he's like, if you can do it, then do it. If you can't, then stop fucking lying to me. I was like, wow, okay. Like, hey, man, like, this is the way that the Google ads process works. There's a waiting period. It's like, also, if you want to change your ad copy, here's the format for everything. You can go ahead and revise it if you'd like. It ended up being a situation where I pulled out and I was like, you know, we're not gonna work with your agent or with your team anymore, just because we want to have a good relationship with people. And I feel like it's like you have too much urgency to where we can't stick to our process. And I don't want to take on something where the results might not be the best because we can't do it the way we know works.
Yeah.
But it was a good indicator for me to like, okay, always go back to that process that you built. It's there for a reason, Ben. You know, it doesn't matter. Don't step outside of that.
Yeah.
Just, you know, a little check. Just like, shit.
And we have tons of processes, like even for the show and stuff. And anytime I shortcut them, it's like, I hate myself for it. 'Cause I'm like, man, I built that for a reason because I got burned before and I got good advice and then I don't use them. It's like, it's good to have those little reminders. And all of our processes are designed so that if you eject on any step of the process, we know you're going to be a problem. At times we just straight let you go. I did that to a PPC client 2 months ago. I'm like, we talked about this. I said, you have to do this. I said, it's going to take this long. And I said, if you're not willing to commit to doing this for 3 months, there's absolutely no point in doing this. And I do not want your money. And oh, yeah. And like, I thought I had it managed, but I should have paid attention more. Yeah. And so I ended up firing them and refunding them. Like, I told you that I was not going to do this. And I gave you a warning in the middle. And then I will send a video note specifically because I want them to pick up everything that I'm saying. If you were that guy that would, you know, tried to hire you, I would send you a note and say, Ben, we talked about what we have to do and you're not doing it. And I apologize if this was my mistake in not communicating it well, but we do have to do this. So I kind of like soften the edge, but I always apologize when I reprimand people. Yeah. And then
this is the way it has to be. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry if I didn't explain this right, or I apologize if I didn't explain this right, because I don't want them to think that I'm just yelling at them. But then I proceed to tell them that they're doing it the wrong way. And like, if you want to stay here, you have to, you know, behave the way we ask our clients to behave. I've sent people that thought it was okay to like text me in the middle of the night pissed about stuff. No. Respond next morning. I'm like, I apologize if I didn't communicate this to you, but we don't do that. and you,
Yeah.
and if you
Yeah.
need that, that's fine, but I'll help you find somebody else. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. No, I totally agree because all comes back to my fault that I didn't stick to the process that we built. Because that process is there, number one, to make sure that we don't get things mixed up on our way from A to Z. And the other thing too is to make sure that they always get results.
yeah,
And so me not sticking to the process that I built for them, I actually did an injustice to the client, even though my intentions in skipping the process was to help them get things going quickly. It's
right.
just a reminder, you always gotta, they're there for a reason.
Yeah, one of my all-time, biggest business mentors, Marcus Lemonis, he's always like, trust the process when he's on his show, and when he's talking, he's like,
Yeah.
do it this way for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
the same thing when people can't figure it out, then he can't work with them. He takes his money back or fires them or loses some of his money usually.
Yeah.
What you mentioned about that client that would turned out to be a pain in the ass and that you chose not to work with anymore. One of the things that I've tried to do more and more recently, and I'm curious if you do this or if you have in the past, is say we hadn't met and you weren't referred to me by Vlad to come on the show, and you reached out and like applied, then I would go out and like stalk you on social media and like look up your company sites and find out how you interact and comment and stuff like that. So I spend a lot more time like what I call like observing people in the wild, because then I know that they're probably going to do the same thing to me eventually. So I don't know if you have a process for that or if you've ever done anything like that before.
I haven't done that before. I definitely will go and I'll look up people's social medias. Like the biggest thing is like I'll check out their Instagram and their Facebook. A lot of times, like in part of the sales process, like I get in contact with someone immediately, boom, boom, friend them. Like that way we're connected and maybe it makes it easier to move things forward.
Yeah.
But I haven't like looked at the way they engage with other people. That's a smart idea because it gives you a lot of insight without having to actually go through it.
Yeah.
I think also one thing, I know you do a lot of video. I've actually been having a lot of success with text messaging. I've actually had, specifically with our real estate lead generation or mortgage lead generation, I've actually almost completely signed people up 100% for lead generation via text.
Wow.
Without, and it was actually really, it's happened a couple of times, and I have lead gen campaigns for myself. And what happens is, I always try to call people and follow up with them for our ads. I have 2 salespeople, and so they'll usually set meetings. But if they're just like not able to get a hold of somebody, or I see something and I like look the person up, I always look up that before I'm giving the leads to someone. I'm always making sure they're good leads. And so I'll notice like, oh, Joel never got a hold of this person. They never picked up the phone. So I'll be like, hey, and I'll text them, hey, Vanessa, it's Ben with Zima. You filled out our form on our website. Just want to see if you're still interested. If not, please let me know so my team stops blowing you up. And usually that'll always get a response, always. And they'll be like, oh, no, I'm so sorry. I've been busy for the holidays. Would still love to talk to you. Can we text? And I was like, yeah, of course. So then I texted her. I had a pre-made video that I already had used for other people, sent her that. It was kind of cool. I did it while I was doing other things, and I signed someone up via text. And I was like, I noticed a lot of leads, a lot of people, they will always respond via text. Like it's very, very uncommon that you just get left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. I have a friend who runs a company called callaction.co.
Okay.
You might like that. It's built to be authentic text message automation.
Oh, cool.
But I totally agree with you. And I really like what you said on the last part of that text message. You said, hey, you introduce yourself so who this random number is calling, obviously. And then you say, if you're not interested, let me know and we'll stop bothering you. We'll stop blowing up. And that's a great takeaway. And if they're not interested, you can stop bothering them, which is like, then you can move on to the next deal. But I've closed a decent amount. I mean, I've closed a few things over text over the years and over Messenger all the time. But we should do way more of that. That's a good point.
I think it's just a convenient, like for me, it's like people always say, how do we get customers online? Well, you go where your customers are going. So like text message, it's so convenient. Like my grandma text messages now, everyone's using it. So it's like, I figure I might as well. And I always cracks me up. I was, there's a LA Fitness here in Kirkland, Washington. And I go there and there's one guy who we had been like we were gonna sign up. Me and my business partner, we we're gonna sign everyone up in the company, and we had been talking about it, but we hadn't done it yet. And
Mm-hmm.
like I remember he was like, he had been texting me every day. He's persistent. He was a cool dude, but he was flipping persistent. And I remember one time he was like, "You guys still interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, we'll get to it, man. I promise." Sorry, it's taking so long. He said, "Hey, no worries. I'll keep blowing you up." And it just like it cracked me up, but it's like so true. You know, that's what you have to do. And so
Yeah.
letting people know if you aren't really interested in this, like if you want, you're out. It's like almost like psychology too. Like if you don't want this, please let me know. Otherwise, like I know I can do something good for you, so I'm gonna come after you.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way that it works.
Yeah. I don't think we're perfect at this, but I try to have everybody on the team here say, and like, just so you know, what we follow up very thoroughly. And if at any point you don't want to hear from us, just let us know. And like, I include that in some of my messaging because letting them know ahead of time will not annoy them. Then they're expecting it. And then
Yeah,
also letting them know later, like, hey, if you don't want this, then I'll go away is
yeah,
obviously, very good too. And I feel like that's made a big difference. I'm in the middle of negotiations on like a $30,000 job. And the guy thanked me middle of the way through. He's like, I super appreciate how you follow up. He's like, nobody else does that. I was like, oh,
yeah,
so like
yeah.
you can
You
actually
care.
earn respect if you just do it the right way.
Yeah, you're just like I follow. You follow up because you care. Really, that's what it comes down to. It, you know.
Exactly. And that takeaway is always good. In your own language, authentically say, hey, if you're not interested, that's cool. Let me know. But, if you're still
Yeah,
interested in solving this problem, then we can help you.
yeah. I like that. I also I've been trying to figure out ways to like text and message better. And I know Chad Oda, you know Chad. He
Yeah.
commented on our Facebook Live. I don't know if he's watching right now. Chad is like the chat bot. You know, he's like
God.
the whiz at that stuff.
You know,
Yeah.
Chad.
And
Yeah.
uh-oh, I clicked on the Facebook post and we got
I don't know
double
if he's
volume
watching
here.
right now.
No
Chad
problem.
is.
There we go. I muted it.
Cool.
Anyways, I've been trying to figure out ways to like communicate via text more persuasively. And
Mhm.
I've noticed a couple things that have been working for myself. So number one, preface things in a way to where if people are saying no, they're not saying no to like online marketing, they're saying no to you. Because like it's harder for people to say no to you. So like what I would say is like instead of like, are you still interested in online marketing? I would say, are you still interested in doing your marketing with us? Because then they're less likely to say no to that because they don't want to tell me no, I don't want to, like no, they don't know me yet, I haven't done anything wrong, so I don't know Ben, I don't want to, I'm not gonna be mean to him, like I'll hear him out, you know what I mean?
I like
Yeah, so it works really well to flip things instead of like, hey,
personalize it, even at that
personal.
level. Make it personal.
Yeah, that's been working really well. And then the other thing is like every time I text, I always end on a question. So I might tell them a statement, I might whatever, but I always end on a question. And it's not just a question that's like, let me know your thoughts. It's always like something that like explicitly is going to ask for an answer. And that way I keep the conversation going. And one thing that I learned is like, especially via text and things like you can condition people to expect things. So like, for example, there's like a psychological study that was done and like it was actually done via couples. And so like one like maybe the boyfriend would text the girlfriend every day, maybe like something funny, like a funny GIF or something at like 11:05 a.m. And
Mm-hmm.
he would do that every day for an extended period of time. And eventually the girlfriend would start to expect those. And what would happen is if she didn't get that message, rather than feeling happy because she saw something funny on her phone, she actually feels sad because she's not getting that message or that. And it would be subconscious. Like it wouldn't be like 11:05, she like looks down and she just like all of a sudden feels kind of off.
Mm-hmm.
And so like doing that, like and having these reminders notifications set up, you can actually like kind of bait people to be excited and talk to you just by the type of content and things that you're sending them. So like we're sending out email campaigns or like chat bots. We're using chat bots. We're sending out messages and like we're keeping it like different. So like making people laugh, sending them things to like brighten their day as well as build rapport over online platforms. And like I'm noticing like as I'm doing this stuff, if we stop doing it, I'm actually getting people messaging us. So like we're sending out like stuff and then all of a sudden we'll stop for a few days and I'll get the person who I stopped messaging who'll text me and they'll ask me a question. And I think it's really interesting to see how that works because
Hmm.
it's like it's kind of part of social hacking, like what we were talking about. And
Yeah.
I'm not really quite sure how to put a finger on it, but I think it's just setting expectations, like building relationships and I guess you put yourself forward enough times, people are going to match that. And then when you go away, they're going to say, hey, where'd you go?
Yep.
I think it's interesting.
That's super interesting. That's excellent advice too on all messaging, period, but specifically in short message format like texting or bots, because if you can definitely condition them. But I really like what you said. Like if you make a statement, end with, like not a yes or no question, a thinking question is kind of what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Because I have a guy that's mentored me and taught me a lot over the years. He said, when you ask for referrals, don't ask, do you know anybody that could use our whatever services.
Yeah.
He says, you say, who do you know that could use them? Because then it's not a yes or no, and you have to go, who do I know that I should introduce Ben to? Or just like little stuff like that goes a long way. It's crazy.
There was even what I did before was I sold life insurance and I did door-to-door sales. I did them at the same time. I wasn't like knocking doors selling life insurance, but there were people who I sold pest control to from door-to-door sales, and I also sold them a life insurance policy because they found out that's what I did. So it was actually cool. It was really cool. But what I did was, and what my sales manager had taught me for Mass Mutual was, when you ask for referrals, you should have a pen in your hand, and you should say, who do you know that could use my service? And you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 written down in front of them, and have them have 5 blank spaces in front of them, and just wait for them to tell you. And if they give you 3, that's so great. Is there any way you could give me 2 more people? And just like really get that. And it works. It works. It feels, at first it feels awkward, but once you get it down, it's actually like people, if you have 5 spaces, people are going to give you 5 versus just like leaving it open. And that's why it's nice if you have, like, I have a notepad. I've been taking notes actually on some of the stuff we've been talking about. And like if I would have written 1 through 5, whom do you know? 5, they would say 5 for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it works.
That's a great like, I forget the name of the close, but it's like the assumptive close where you pull out the contract and you start filling it out. It's the same kind of psychology where like you're already going down that path. It's hard to turn that around.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually one of the things I love about doing door to door was like you could totally just pull stupid random shit that would work. So like it'd be like there's like the light bulb close where like out of the blue you're talking to him, and like it'd be like we're talking out of the blue. I'm like, so Gabe, are you gonna be here tomorrow? And like he would say yes, and then I would just start filling out the contract. But it might be like, we're halfway through the sales process, and I just all of a sudden close you. And it's actually really funny. I don't think there's really any other application for that close aside from door-to-door sales. But we would have we'd have contests. I was a sales manager at one point, so we'd have contests where we would like record it. We had iPads that we sold on, so we would record the conversations. And so it'd be like a video of like maybe my chin. You could see my face, and you could hear the other person because I'm holding the iPad. And like we would have one where like you'd have to like throw in the weird words. So like one of the words we would have to throw in was like pickle. So if you could throw in pickle 5 times in your sales pitch, then you would get $30 at the end of the day.
Oh my God, dude.
We had like so much fun.
That's a pretty interesting exercise. What was the point of it?
Just to add fun to it. Like sometimes when you get out there and you're like trying to sell to people, doing door to door, you like get in this grind of like knocking on doors and like trying to make sales, and like that's not how you make sales. You make sales like the way that I would try to preface it is like I'm just walking around trying to make friends. Like that's what I would do. And people would ask me like, hey, what are you doing? I'm just like, oh, just walking around. And they're like, what are you selling? I'm like, oh, I'm actually just out here taking care of the bugs. Like I would never act like I'm selling anything because I'm not. I don't want to be like a pushy salesman. So we try to lighten people up and like make it more fun by saying, let's try and see who can say pickle the most times today. And then then the guys would get witty and clever, and the customers would laugh. People would look at you weird, and it would be fun.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and you're totally right, because you've got to relax and get to like a place where you're comfortable and you are just making friends. Because great salespeople, a good friend of mine is on. He may still be on. Tim May. Great salespeople are just the kind of people you want to hang around all the time. Like he's been in sales his entire life, and it's like it's fun to watch him sell because it's effortless. It's like, and it is from all basing it on the relationship and, really just realizing that if you can build rapport, everything else is easy. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I've been doing to build rapport, and I've been telling people is like, for example, I had a call in Miami the other day, and it was with a real estate agent, and they were like kind of like nervous, and like they had worked with people who hadn't worked before, and I was like, hey, here's what we'll do. Like, we'll focus on creating a strategy for you that's going to work. I believe it's going to work because it's working for other people. If you don't think that way, then you can keep that strategy and you'll have a friend here in Seattle moving forward. That way it's like keeps it light. And
yeah.
it's like, hey, I'm not here to sell you. I already have a business that's running. We don't need your money. We don't want to take it unless it's going to add value to us and we're going to add value to you. That's like really just letting people know. Even it seems corny like saying that, but just telling people that totally lowers the guard because likely no one's going to say something like that if they're full of shit.
I would agree with that. Yeah, that's the other thing I've known about, but learned a lot more through a program I went through this year and through a mentor friend of mine. Now he's the biggest takeaway of what I learned from the program was positive indifference, was what you just said. Like, hey, if this person, it's good for both of us, awesome. If not, that's totally cool too. And it's no skin off my back. And just that attitude has closed me like an extra $150,000.
Yeah, because people feel so much more comfortable talking.
And I legitimately want to help them. So it's not, it's like, it's easy to sell what I already want to do.
Yeah, exactly. One thing too, I noticed, I always notice I do this, is head nodding. If like mirroring body language, like you always want people that, if you head nod subconsciously, then like the people you're talking to will head nod. Yeah. And then they'll like, that's like a yes, that's like getting them in like the ready to, like if they're subconsciously, I've actually seen people where people have been head nodding so well that so they'll ask someone, this person will say no, and they'll head nod while they say no. Because they're such in the move of saying yes.
That's excellent. Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. And another thing, what was I thinking of there? Yeah, when you condition people to do that, it's helpful. Oh, as far as like lowering the barriers, sometimes people just need to like relax and laugh a little bit. So I was shooting video with a client of mine, and we're putting together a bunch of sales content and stuff. And you could totally use this in a sales call if you're contextually aware of what's going on. Like, don't just pull it out of nowhere. But they're a coach. They're an awesome life coach and health coach, and they do a lot of coaching. And so I opened up the video and I said, coaching is total bullshit, right? And like it just totally like breaks the ice and like lightens the mood. And then we laughed, and then we got into like the real content. Yeah. And sometimes just throwing something in, like you said, like you were saying earlier, like saying pickle or whatever. Sometimes just throwing something extra in there just totally like pattern interrupt, and then people are like, they take a breath and they're like, oh, I don't have to be so wound up about this. Yeah, they get out of their rut. Yeah. But yeah, I have a client of mine that does this, and I've been paying attention to it. I haven't mentioned it to him, and he may see this, but he always says, you are so right. He says that to me over and over and over when we're having conversations. It's like just a very natural phrase that he says. And what I think the psychology, I'm be curious to see what you think, because like I didn't realize I was nodding with you too. But I think it's similar psychology, because if I keep saying, oh yeah, you're so right, I totally agree, like you are so right about that, like it's a very natural phrase for him. I feel like that will make you trust me, and I also feel like it will make it so that I like you because you're stroking my ego like repetitively. I don't know what you think about that or not. Yeah, well, it's like you're getting them in the vibe. Like then he's telling you you're right, and you're like, yeah, I am right, and you get going with it. It elevates the mood. Yeah, so it's super interesting. It's not, I didn't notice it until, I mean, he's been a client for 6-8 months, a while, and just the other day I was thinking, I'm like he always says that, and then the really cool thing that he does with it too, and I don't know if he knows that he does this. I'll send this to him later, but I don't know if he knows this, but he'll say, you are so right. And you know what else I was thinking about? And then if he wants to shift, he can shift right there, because he's not saying but to like halt the flow. He's saying, You know, and like you are so right about that, Ben. You know what else I was thinking about? And then it's like totally natural transition into where he wants to go.
That's smart. That's a good way to do it. There's two things I've tried to eliminate from my language is the word but and no, the word no. They're negative terms, you know, like if you say but, if like you told me something and I was like, I agree, but it's actually like, I agree, but then like I'm overpowering it a little bit, you know? So I try to just like take that word out. And then I also, with no, it's good to be, you got to be able to say no for sure. There's a time and place for it, but usually I try to replace it with saying the word sure, because it's like indifferent. So like if someone throws an objection at me or something, or I just always say sure, because like I'm not telling them yes, I'm not telling them no, I'm just acknowledging what they're saying. So it's like very neutral, and like usually I can be safe with saying that, because if
That's a
they're
good
like,
one.
sure, it works. I'm sure, you know, like shrug it off. Usually like either forget what they're objecting or, you know.
Yeah, they're not getting what they've been conditioned to get with a no, so that they can keep pounding against it or keep, you know, fighting.
Yeah,
Just to totally relieve all the pressure, and there's no value in fighting for it anymore.
exactly. That's 100%. But yeah, there's lots more to learn. I think the books, I definitely want to read the Never Split the Difference book. And I actually bought Ghost in the Wires, but I didn't read it yet. I have it on my audiobooks. So I'm actually going to jump into that.
Yeah, that's one of my all-time favorites. And I'll have to, it was what
Everybody is saying.
What Everybody is
It's
saying.
by an ex-FBI agent named Joe Navarro.
Okay.
And he was like one of the best in cracking some cases and things like that. And he talks about, what I like about it is because it kind of has like a crime suspense to it. So he'll like bring you through the whole interrogation and like the crime, and like he'll describe what he saw at the crime scene and everything. So like it's kind of intense, but he'll talk about, you know, like how he noticed this criminal did this, and you know, this is why he believed. And he, in the way he does it is like, it's not like someone crosses their arms and all of a sudden he's like, oh, you did it. You know, it's like he'll talk to them like 3 or 4 or 5 different occasions, and he'll ask them the same question in different conversation, and they'll do the same thing every time. And he'll ask them other questions where he knows the answer already, and they won't make those jerk movements where they're crossing or twitching. And then he'll go back and say, okay, over 5 times we have them on videotape, we can conclude right now that they're lying when they tell us this one thing. It's really, really interesting because the way he does it, it totally puts you in like the criminal minds, you know. Then you feel like you're FBI agent when you're talking to people.
I used to love that show. It kind of fell apart later on in the years, but that's one of my favorite shows, Criminal Minds.
Yeah, it's good. I watch it every once in a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is kind of way off of what we both do for a living, but I think it actually super applies every day. So it's fun to explore it and nerd out a little bit with somebody that pays attention to it. And my last question for you would be, if somebody's like, oh, like I'm super interested in this, or now I'm just starting to kind of pull the curtain back and understand why things worked or didn't work sometimes, what would be your advice of like where to start the journey of learning, you know, more about it? Obviously read like What Everybody Says.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we talked about Never Split the Difference. I think those are good ones too, but where else would you encourage me to start?
I mean, for me, the way that I learn is I go on Google and I search things. So like, I think, you know, even like before we take our recommendations, like going and searching, and like maybe even searching like and using keywords that are targeted to what you're doing. So like if I was like selling life insurance or doing door-to-door sales, I would ask like how to use body language in door-to-door sales, or I'd ask how to use body language in life insurance. Because then you're likely going to get like an exact template for what you're doing, because there's just so much information out there now. But like for me, it's like identifying the things that I can work on. So usually it starts with like one thing. So maybe like I'm paying attention to eye contact. So then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, on average, you want to make eye contact for 4 to 7 seconds at one period of time. Otherwise, you're going to either look shifty or you're going to look like you're staring people down. And I would write that down, 4 to 7 seconds. And then when I'm talking to people, I would start counting in my head, and I would say, every 4 seconds, I'm going to look away. Every 7 seconds, I'm going to look away. And you might alternate. Maybe do 4 seconds, maybe do 6 seconds. And I would just start trying to master that one thing. Probably take you like 10 days. And it'll be a little awkward at first. You might seem like a ding-dong when you're talking to people. But then after that, you say, okay, now I want to start head nodding. So you're going to start head nodding when you talk, and you're going to just do that. And eventually it's just like riding a bike. Like you're just going to start picking up these terms and you're just going to practice it. But the thing with this stuff is practice. The only way you're going to get it down is practicing. So you actually have to like make a concerted effort to pay attention for body language, for eye contact, for head nodding, for crossing arms, for touching the neck. You got to pay attention to it. Otherwise it's going to go right over your head.
Yeah.
So you just got to practice it.
Excellent advice. Well, thank you so much, man. We will definitely have you back soon, and I hope you have awesome holidays. And
yeah, same to you. I appreciate it.
And everybody watching, feel free to drop any comments or reach out, and Ben or I will reply to you guys. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Gabe. Thank you, everybody.
You've been listening to Today's Business Leaders with Gabe Arnold. Remember to subscribe on iTunes. For more information, visit todaysbusinessleaders.com.